come on in and get the doors shut, and we'll grab our seats. All right, at this time, we're going to call our natural resource meeting to order. And I'd like everyone to stand. Representative McCool is going to lead us in prayer, and then we'll go straight into the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, we praise you for everything you do for us. We praise you for your Son, Jesus Christ, who came and died on the cross and rose from the grave, that we have eternal life with you, Father, in heaven. We ask you to watch over us and guide us in every action we take, Father, as only you can lead us through all these situations. We ask in your Son's name, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, I'll ask the clerk, please go ahead and take our roll.
Senator Chambers Armstrong, Senator Carpenter, Senator Mills,
Here.
Senator Schickel, Senator Southworth, Senator Turner, Senator Webb, Senator Westerfield, Senator Wheeler, Senator Williams, Representative Ballman, Representative Blanton, Representative Bowling, Representative Bridges, Representative Burke,
Here.
Representative Chester Burton,
Here.
Representative Dossett,
Present.
Representative Dotson,
Here.
Representative Flannery, Representative Fugate, Representative Gentry, Representative Grossberg,
Present.
Representative Johnson,
Here.
Representative McCool,
Here.
Representative Miles, Representative Smith, Representative Wesley, Representative White, Representative Williams, Co-Chair Smith,
Present.
and Co-Chair Gooch.
Present.
We have a quorum. I need a motion to approve minutes. Motion and a second. All those in favor of the sign of aye. Opposed likewise. The motion carries. I'm going to ask my co-chairman Gooch if he has any comments for our meeting this morning. Anything you'd like to say to the committee? All right, very good. And to our members, do we have any members that have any special comments or wish to recognize or guess? Representative, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to recognize my beautiful niece, Erica Hatfield. She came along with my father, Sherman Dotson, who is a retired coal miner from Pike County, Kentucky. Well, thank you for keeping the lights on for us, sir.
Let's please give them a warm welcome to our committee. Welcome. Representative Wesley.
Yes, I'd like to, Mr. Chairman, thank you, but I'd like to, for everybody in here to pray for Richard White. He was hit head on, and he's not going to be here today, but he asked for everyone to pray for him and his family. He's at UK. Thanks, sir.
Very good. Thank you for the update. Do we have any other members wishing to be recognized or have special guests with us? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and get started. I think first on our agenda is going to be the blockchain report. And of course, this was created by legislation from this committee. So go ahead and have our group come up to the table, and after you all take a seat and I turn it over to you, go ahead and identify yourself for our records, gentlemen.
Good afternoon. I am David Carter. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer with the Commonwealth Office of Technology.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Brian Julian. I am the Program Coordinator and Assistant Professor at the University of the Cumberlands for the Masters of Global Business with Blockchain Technology program.
All right, very good. Gentlemen, we'll go ahead and turn it over to you so you can give us an update on the work you all have done this last year for us.
Very good. Thank you. And I'd like to start out by thanking the committee for your time today and the opportunity to share a little bit about the committee, to the working group with you all today. The technology working group is constructed of 9 statutory members. that is defined in KRS 42747, and is comprised of subject matter experts that come from the various agencies within state government for the Commonwealth Office of Technology, the Public Service Commission, the Energy and Environment Cabinet, the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security, and representation for academia. In addition, we have ex-3 officio members representing the public utilities. There are 7 advisory members representing the Cabinet for Economic Development, academia, local government, and the private sector. We meet bi-monthly. We use the state virtualization platform for that to allow broad participation for our members, as well as a public view into the meeting as an open meeting. We gather our research and thoughts throughout the year and compile that into a report that we turn over to the Legislative Resource Commission on December 1st of each year. Our current report is in draft. We are slated to put a final vote and approval on that report November 28th ahead of the December 1st submission. First, I'd like to talk about kind of what our mission statement is. The mission statement of the Kentucky Blockchain Working Group is to evaluate the feasibility and efficacy of using blockchain technology to enhance the Commonwealth by identifying opportunities for adoption, utilization, and a regulation of blockchain technology. This is fairly well scoped within the KRS that define the group, and we try to work within those boundaries. We also want to talk a little bit about what blockchain technology is. A lot of times blockchain technology is associated directly with cryptocurrency, things like Bitcoin. It's much more than that. It's the underlying underpinning technology that empowers Bitcoin. But it's a standalone technology that carries benefits that can really apply itself to multiple business verticals and transactions. The definition of blockchain is really kind of up here on the screen. I don't want to read that to you, but I would like to talk about 3 of the distinct things that make it different than traditional transaction-based systems. It's based on a distributed ledger. That's a copy of the ledger is stored and verified by various nodes within the blockchain. That adds a layer of transparency and trust between the blockchain participants. It also eliminates that single point of failure that you have in traditional transactional-based systems because you're not dependent on a centralized database. The records within a blockchain are also immutable. By design, blockchain will let you change that information that's on that blockchain. That adds a layer of additional integrity and accountability to the transactions that occur on the blockchain. In addition, blockchain includes a concept called smart contracts. These are rules of the road, rules of the transactions allowed within the blockchain. And they can be used to automate a lot of the manual processes that go into transactional-based systems. That leads a lot to gains in speed and efficiency and just easier transactions as opposed to having a lot of manual intervention in most transactional-based systems. So those 3 things combined will lead us to a highly secure, efficient, and highly a system with a lot of high integrity. We would like to talk a little bit about the area of opportunities that we've looked at as the working group. They fall within these 5 categories primarily. These primarily map to the 16 critical infrastructure areas as defined by the Department of Homeland Security. We have public utilities, transportation logistics, healthcare, finance, records management, and so forth. So I would like to start us out with what we've observed through public utilities to this point. There's opportunity with public utilities. We're not seeing a big push for public utilities to use blockchain at this time, but I think there's a recognition that there's opportunity there. The delivery of utilities to consumers is based on a highly complex infrastructure. That highly complex infrastructure is assembled from various components some referred to as supervisory control and data acquisition systems. SCADA systems is what some may call them. But those are mission-specific industrial control systems that add some intelligence to the components of the complex infrastructure. And it eases the ability to resolve issues and problems if those components can talk with each other. That's kind of a good use case for blockchain because it allows them to securely speak without having third-party interference be able to come in from the side on those because it's a closed ecosystem. There's also complex financials that are behind energy. Things like the buying and selling of power as a commodity, concepts like renewable energy credits. Those are the transactional type systems that are well-defined for blockchain technology. Like I said, we haven't really observed a big push in this area for use of blockchain technology, but it's something that the working group has continued to look at very closely as there's opportunity there. Another area that we've looked at is transportation logistics and supply chain management. This is really important to Kentucky. Some of the things that make it important to Kentucky is within 600 miles of 54% of the U.S. population. We're within 600 miles of 56% of the U.S. manufacturing capacity. We also have the benefit of having the convergence of major interstates through Kentucky that either directly or indirectly lead to all points north, south, east, and west. We are home to 2 Class 1 railroad systems. We have the Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport, which is the 8th largest cargo hub in North America. That makes transportation logistics very important to the state of Kentucky because of our unique positioning there. This is also an industry that's taking note of the importance of blockchain and the benefits that it can share. Some insights into that is in 2017, the Blockchain and Transportation Alliance was formed. This is a collection of industry leaders such as UPS, FedEx, Delta Airlines, Union Pacific, that are defining standards for how blockchain will be used within the transportation industry. Other things like Maersk and IBM partnership in TradeLens on a global supply chain transaction tracking system that can track goods from point of origin to point of consumption and all points in between. Walmart is using blockchain to track food safety supply chain concerns to better improve the safety for their consumers. UPS uses it for their real-time shipment tracking throughout their global network. So this is an area that is very astute about blockchain technology and the benefits that it can bring. So it's one that we're going to continue to watch very closely as a working group. And
David, if I could just add in, I've been following those of us that are in the coal fields where you've got a lot of reclaimed property that needs to be cleaned up, and it's very difficult for these companies to find bonding. And so now you're seeing the tokenization because of blockchain where you can tokenize these bonds. So now you have reclaimed companies who did not have access or could not bond unless they're in the greater pool are now able to pick up assets and monies through New York and other cities that have tokenized this, that will put money directly on the site to clean up some of the largest areas that need to be cleaned up that have no funding there to get them done. So there's a lot of applications that could be geographical for us in the coal fields or areas that have military bases where you have veterans and records. I mean, blockchain's the security aspect for legitimizing a lot of things that have been hacked. I mean, the water utility, for a lot of people will remember the system that was hacked. And we really don't know what happened in the period of the time because it was a public utility or a private utility operator that got hacked, so they did not have to share their information with us. But if they'd had blockchain security in, they would have never been hacked. And so I think there's some applications for us, the charge of this committee when we looked at it is how do we push Kentucky out? And we were the first at that time to really look at utilizing blockchain for the safety aspect and security in the state. And I commend the job that you all have done, but those are just a couple of real examples that we're dealing with at home that mean jobs. People go back to work because now you've got a big reclaim effort and you've got people that can get bonding to put the money on the ground when they need it. So just some unique aspects of how it can affect you from your water security and safety to jobs in your district.
Very good. The last area that I'll cover with you before I turn this over to Dr. Julian is healthcare. This is another industry that's very important to Kentucky. We have some of the leading research and education healthcare institutions housed here in Kentucky. And the delivery of these healthcare services to our citizens is important, but also our contribution to the healthcare system as a whole because of the institutions here in Kentucky. Modern healthcare is based on sharing of information between providers, specialists, insurance carriers, institutions. And that is a prime candidate for technologies like blockchain to be able to share that amongst the community and have trust within that community and security of the information as it moves. What we're finding is somewhat of some hesitation, maybe, because of the urgent nature of the communication in healthcare, that health and human safety relies on it. So they tend not to look as far to the cutting edge as some other industries might, because they don't want to have the impacts of making the transition. But we truly believe that as blockchain becomes more pervasive in the mainstream, that healthcare will be opening their eyes to that because there is potential there. So we'll want to make sure that we continue to keep a close eye on healthcare and how they may use that in the future. In the interim, though, we are seeing that healthcare is seeing global and national interest in blockchain for information sharing. At the National Health Institute and their National Library of Medicine publish articles every year about the potential of using blockchain for data sharing at a national or global level, specifically around lessons that we may have learned during the global pandemic. So there's opportunity there. They're looking at it at a national level. We'll continue to monitor it at an institutional level. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over for Dr. Julian.
So I was under the impression I was just here to change the slides, but I guess I can add some things in. I wanted to expand. It wasn't really on my list of discussion, but since Senator Smith brought it up, in 2020, one of our first reports, actually our first report that we provided, one of the discussions we had was actually on bonding, specifically with municipal bonding and the opportunity that blockchain provides within this field. Currently, if you go to buy a municipal bond, one share, the cheapest you can find is probably $5,000 for a share, which does not make it very accessible to those that have minimal savings. The average savings account, I think, in the United States is roughly $300. So that does not provide an opportunity for a lot of people to take advantage of these tax-free financial instruments. Also, it limits who is able to purchase it, which puts an extra burden on the municipalities. With what we would call tokenization and fractionalization of municipal bonds, what you can do, the tokenization is where you assign a token as opposed to a bond or stock certificate to a municipal bond issuance. But then fractionalization allows that single token to be broken down into as many different fractionals of that one. So what does that mean? So if you break down a token of a municipal bond, which is $5,000, into say 10, now you're looking at $50 per bond. You're getting 1/10 of the bond. So what does that provide? Well, now it provides access to those who might not previously had access to this ability to generate wealth through tax-free municipal bonding. That also allows local governments, because of the nature of blockchain, they can earmark a certain amount of the bond issuance to only be spent or to be bought within the city or the region. So instead of what you have now, where bond issuances are bought up in whole and go to New York, as Senator Smith had mentioned, what you can do now is you can keep that money in the region to build the wealth of your region. Your economic development can now become community development. So instead of your money leaving Main Street to go to Wall Street, now you're building your communities. And I saw this when I first got into blockchain. This is what got me into blockchain. That's what had me passionate about it. I was the chief of staff for the Department for Local Government, and we oversaw municipal bonding. I said, this blockchain can revolutionize how we fund our schools, our utilities, our cities, our counties, our infrastructure. The opportunity is there. We just need to find that legal framework and define the legal framework for this to allow it to come to fruition. Saying that brings me to one of the big issues that we've been following over the last year. Some of you, I believe, are on the Judiciary Committee and probably looked at this last year, but is the 2022 Emerging Technology Amendments that came out of the Uniform Law Commission last year. These are recommended amendments to our UCC to create a legal framework, a legal structure for commercial transactions utilizing blockchain-based digital assets, which are called controllable electronic records, to allow them to be utilized in commercial transactions, much as you do, currency or checks or, any other different financial instrument. So we've had last year, 28 states had proposed the amendments. I think 11 have passed. I believe Senator Westerfield from this committee is the head of judiciary, and he put forth the Senate Bill 64 last year. So this actually defines how these controllable electronic records, which is basically blockchain as a fiscal instrument utilizing, a measure of value and as a medium of exchange, are able to be used in transactions. So once some form of legal framework is in place, we'll now be able to see the benefits of these financial benefits of blockchain. Also talking about finance, one of the big news stories over the last year, of course, was the scandal with FTX, which is a crypto exchange. That caused some issues within the cryptocurrency markets because the association with cryptocurrency was, cryptocurrency is bad because, FTX failed, they lost billions of dollars. What we found out was it was straight out fraud. It had nothing to do with the underlying cryptocurrencies that were being exchanged on the market. It was just good old-fashioned fraud that's been around even before electricity was around. So that's one of the big news. And as you'll see recently, confidence in Bitcoin being the spokesmodel of all cryptocurrency has started to go back up. So
Hey,
the
Brian,
markets have gone up.
One of our members has a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I'd yield to Representative Smith at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to say I'm proud of the University of the Cumberlands and what you've done over the last few years on helping our kids in the area with tuition, and probably a blue ribbon model on how to run a university. So thank you for what you do in my area. My question, I guess, is on the blockchain. Are you not restricted some through the federal, since, we've been waiting on Congress to take up regulations on regulating the crypto, and I know blockchain is what drives crypto, but isn't that the biggest hindrance that you have right now on expanding and getting into a lot of the markets? I know we've dealt with it. I'm on banking and insurance. We looked at, and I brought it up several times, we've got ATMs in some of our C-stores now trading in crypto. There's no regulation on it. Isn't that the biggest hindrance you have right now, is maybe that there is no regs driven on the federal side, that there's a lot of back and forth between Treasury and SEC on who should oversight? Could you allude to what the biggest hindrance you have?
Sure, and I think it's the federal government trying to decide, one, who is going to regulate this industry, and two, how that's going to be done are two big hindrances. But then you have states like Wyoming and Texas that stated, well, we're not waiting for you to make a decision. We're going to put our systems in place because we know what these benefits are. I think that's what sparked the ULC, Uniform Law Commission, to move forward with creating these amendments as well. That way the states can take the leadership if the federal government is not going to. The biggest issue at the federal government level is, again, which agency is going to oversee this. They see it as, whatever way they want to see it. Oh, it's a security, says the SEC. Well, no, it's a medium of exchange. It's currency, says the Treasury and the Federal Reserve. They're trying to decide what they don't realize, and this is an analogy that I utilize when I explain it. Blockchain technology, the basis for these different financial instruments, view it as the creation of paper. If you had a piece of paper that's got a president and some numbers on it, it's currency. That's the way it's being utilized. If it's got ownership in a company, it's a stock, it's a security. Look at how it's being used. If it's got to do with a futures contract, it's a commodity. they're not looking at what the actual technology underlying is. They're getting lost, not able to see the forest because of the trees, because they are not, one, looking at all the information, I believe, and two, completely understanding. It's not an easy concept to understand. I even teach the subject, and as mentioned to David earlier, there's no way I could tell you everything about it. Your subject matter experts in blockchain maybe can tell you 50% of what it's capable of doing or how it's done. You have those that understand how to apply the technology, which is much like myself, and then you have those that know how to build the technology. So the thing is really understanding what this is, because it is such a vast and complex concept. I think once the educational aspect of it is done and someone, does take a logical approach at the federal government to decide how these are going to be handled, yes, we'll move forward. This is going to explode. So we're sitting here in what would be called a niche or boutique market with the finance, with the cryptocurrencies, which of course are the ones that are always talked. I'm not a big cryptocurrency fan, but I understand the other utilization of that. But until there is some kind of playing field defined rules, this isn't going to explode the way we know it's going to.
Just a quick follow-up. So what you're saying, though, is the state of Kentucky can utilize blockchain without federal guidance?
Sure. Just as an example, I think, to help, there's actually, and I don't remember the number, but in KRS, you have what I would call a crowdfunding exemption for raising money for a business. I want to say it's $1 million or $2 million. So if you raise money intrastate just in the state of Kentucky, a company can raise up to, like I said, $1 million or $2 million. Florida raised theirs to $10 million for that intrastate raise. You are not, as a company, you do not have to follow any of the SEC regulation guidelines because it doesn't fall into the interstate commerce. So, that would be potentially something that, if the state of Kentucky wants to move forward, maybe raise those limits little bit, as long as the money's coming from inside the state has complete regulation over that finance. So there are plenty of opportunities for the state. And, that's why we've been coming before the committee for the last 4 years, trying to identify these. So Kentucky was a leader in the field, falling back a little bit, but, we can push forward and be a leader again.
And I'll close, Mr. Chairman, by saying I've watched it over the last few years, and I know that maybe over 50 countries are involved now in crypto and in blockchain and transition of the coins or crypto. I appreciate you taking a lead on this because it is the future, whether we want to accept it or not today. I remember last summer I asked the banks what they were going to do with it. They said they weren't getting involved. Well, this summer during interim, they were saying, well, how they're going to start getting involved. So it's here. And when you see J.P. Morgan's and U.S. Bank and the majors, the financial institutes getting involved in it, I appreciate you taking a step up to kind of help us figure out how we can get involved. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, just in response, if I may, one of the biggest issues you have in the finance right now is what's called, you're required for the banks and financial institutions to have something called qualified custody. Qualified custody is where you have permission to hold, whether it's stocks, commodities, cryptocurrencies, blockchain-based control electronic records. So you need that for escrow and different purposes. Well, banks are the ones that usually provide that. So we need the banks to be comfortable with this and understand how they could provide qualified custody to aid in these potential commercial transactions.
We have another question. Senator Williams, I believe, has a question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sort of separating from cryptocurrency and just look at blockchain really as a contractual method where we have embodied in the blockchain a series of transactions that are contractually obligated to do certain things. That correct understanding that you can create a blockchain like that?
Oh, yes, that's definitely,
Right.
That's what Ethereum was created on, is the smart contract.
Right. So when I do something financially or when I do something in the business environment, man, I got lots of paperwork. I mean, if I'm going to have reams and reams of paper I do that we well understand the that nature of that contract. Maybe I don't, but some of the legal minds here do, and they understand how to interpret it. Do we have a body of law, or do we have anything that, like, we have federal law about all these transactions, we have state law about how we government business transactions. Do we have any state law or precedents about, is this contract that's embodied in this blockchain legally binding on anybody? Or is it just a relationship between two business partners? I mean,
Yeah, as of right now, I would say we don't have any laws on that, primarily because it has not been recognized within the UCC as a medium of exchange within a commercial transaction.
Well,
I believe
smart
that's-
contract could be, it depends on how, just to add in here, depends on what application it is. But I think it's critical for us to realize that blockchain has a financial aspect, and that's one of them. But it can also be used for your construction company. You can tie it into veterans' medical records to make sure that nobody hacks in to get another veteran's records and manipulates that to where we saw years ago we had veterans lose their life because their files kept getting moved. So it's a security application. That's the reason you trust the things like crypto. I'm not a fan of crypto either, but the reason people will go into those ATMs and get it is they have a pretty good feeling that that's going to be legit and it's going to be worth something. And the reason is back to this, blockchain gives it that credibility. And so blockchain has an opportunity to give you a lot of credibility that I just got a notice that one of my credit cards the information was hacked 2 or 3 days ago. You might have gotten the same thing. And so now that information's out there wherever, I personally think my institute that carries my card should have blockchain protecting us. And if I saw that on there with a bank advertising that or card, I would feel a lot better about it. And so you can use it for application of I saw one on a rock truck where a gentleman went to go start the rock truck and it wouldn't start. The blockchain that was secured to the vehicle showed that the tag was expired, so it wouldn't let the truck start and get online or where it was going to be worked because the insurance was not up to date and the tag or something, but they were able to get on through central office and get it activated. But it was just neat to think that a worker was prevented from starting a vehicle and taking off where there was something out of compliance. That's another aspect of blockchain. So I don't want us to lose sight of the fact, because it does get pigeonholed on the financial side.
Right.
There's a tremendous amount of effort that provides a lot of legitimacy to a lot of things that we take for granted that we need.
and that's why I'm talking on the contractual side. Do these 11 states that have done something, does that enforce the contract again for whatever we're doing? Is that what this is doing?
Okay, yes, I understand your question better. Let's step back. A smart contract is neither smart nor a contract. A smart contract is just an automated transaction. So any contract you would have within this automated transactional system would fall under your basic contract law. The UCC point is for utilizing the financial instruments that are blockchain based within the transactions. If you have just a normal contract that is set up as an automatic transaction that's triggered by certain events, it's probably going to be based on current financial instruments. And again, so that would just fall under regular contract law. I hope I explained that.
So it's a technology, not really a contract.
It's a technology, yes. It's just it goes back to just being it's a transaction.
Okay, we have some other questions here. Representative Grossberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's more of a comment than a question. One of the reasons why there's legitimacy for blockchain technologies and all of the related instruments is precisely because it's not regulated and subject to government interference. And although there are a few states that are dabbling in it, we need to be cognizant that there are many people who prefer their transactions to be free of regulation and oversight. Obviously, I wouldn't be working in government if I thought that's the solution, but they're going to find some alternate outlet for it. I mean, it's been the Wild West, and that's how they prefer it. And just as before the Western United States were settled and appropriately governed, there are people who prefer just to fight it out in the streets. And blockchain, to answer Senator Williams' question from my perspective, I don't think that we have that much oversight. That's once again why people are going to blockchain as an instrument. And until we start seeing litigation, I don't know that that will be resolved. And if we impose ourselves into that sphere, which I do think we need to do, we just need to be aware that something else is going to pop up as some other alternative to avoid government regulation and oversight. Thank you, Mr.
And a
Chairman.
good point. And we, just to keep us moving here, because we are getting a little bit late in the hour, but with the smart contract, once something's, the difference in a long-term contract where we may think about in business, you have to sign this contract. This one is usually terminates once you execute what you're supposed to on your end. So that's what the comment to echo here. A lot of people that don't like paperwork, they don't like government. I can sell you something that's required of you to pay me. And so you execute your part of your end, our contract is done. So it's a very interesting way of moving forward without a lot of legal tape, but both of us are satisfied because you don't get what you need from me until you execute the part on yours. So to echo Representative Smith as well, this is something that's going to be around for a while. I think that's the reason that this committee had a lot of wisdom when we put the legislation together to put this group to do this for us, and they work every single week. We have a meeting. I think David's done a fantastic job. Brian's been it from the very, very beginning, before there was a committee, I think. So I think they're going to continue. And I'm going to give you guys a chance to wrap up real quick, and I apologize. We've got another group coming in, and it is late in the day for many of us.
So, no, I think we're pretty much wrapped up. I didn't have anything else. If there's any other questions, be happy to address them. But
Just a comment as we part. We had talked before, because we were one of the first states. We were talking about doing a grand consortium of inviting other states that were contacting us or were curious about bringing together some sort of a conference, if we will, the states that were participating to find out what other states are doing, sort of a information sharing event. Have we ever looked at scheduling something like that, or what's the development on us working to have a large conference in Kentucky, Lexington, Louisville, somewhere, Eastern Kentucky would be perfect, but to be able to bring everyone together to see what they're doing and share what we're doing.
Well, that is something that has been discussed. We haven't got very far on the planning of something like that. We can revive those discussions beginning of this year and work towards that.
And I think that was something that we had discussed, potentially seeing if we could partner with the Council of State Governments, which is in Lexington, because they have all the contacts, and they have the what's it called, the Innovation Department of Innovation, or with them that look into things like that. So that would be probably a good conversation as well.
Very exciting. Listen, thank you for the report. The members, you'll have access to that report, so you can go through it yourself on your own. Any other questions before we go to our next topic? All right, seeing none.
All right.
David, Brian, thank you all both very much for your committee.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Next we have on here is going to be an update on the solar power industry. We have not had this group in front of us for a couple of years now. I don't know whether that's good or bad, but I think as we look at costs and brownouts and things like that, we want to look at all possibilities of stabilizing our grid and giving us affordable and reliable power. So hopefully you've got a nice report for us, but if you could just identify yourself for our records, and I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon. Kenya Stump, Executive Director of the Kentucky Office of Energy Policy.
And I'm Evan Vaughn, Executive Director of the Mid-Atlantic Renewable Energy Coalition.
Evan,
Great. I'm Evan Vaughn, Executive Director of the Mid-Atlantic Renewable Energy Coalition.
I just want to say thank you to the committee for allowing me to speak on solar energy development in Kentucky. A little bit about our office. We are a non-regulatory agency in the Energy and Environment Cabinet. We work in all fuels, spanning coal, natural gas, propane, petroleum, and renewables. And recently we've engaged in work on nuclear as well. We do work in three main areas for the Commonwealth: energy affordability, energy education, and energy resilience. We also co-lead Kentucky's response efforts when we have a natural disaster that affects our energy supplies, and we do that in partnership with the Public Service Commission. One of our main goals is and our main mission is we oversee Kentucky's energy profile and produce that every 2 years, as well as other data visualizations that we track, such as the quarterly coal dashboard, power plant retirements and additions, energy affordability dashboard. And what we're here today, we also track the development of solar in Kentucky. Just some fast facts, and we'll deep dive into this as we move through the presentation, and very cognizant of your time, so we'll move through this as efficiently as possible. When we say a megawatt, that really describes the energy capacity of a project, and a gigawatt is 1,000 megawatts, and you'll hear those terms throughout today's presentation. When we look at Kentucky's utility-owned solar generation, it only accounts for 0.07% of our net utility electricity generation. In total, operational utility-owned solar projects are around 30 megawatts of capacity, and that is operational. When we look at rooftop or solar that's connected at the distribution system, it is outpacing our utility generation by almost double. We currently have about 63.5 megawatts of distributed solar across the state. And most of that solar is spread throughout the state. I believe the last time I looked, we only had 2 or 3 counties that did not have any solar installations in those counties. They are connected via net metering or qualifying facility tariffs. We update these numbers annually, and it's a voluntary data collection that we do in partnership with Kentucky's utilities. Merchant or independent solar projects, right now, those are about 4 gigawatts. And I do need to put a note here. Those 4 gigawatts are 4 gigawatts of projects that have been in front of Kentucky's Electric Generation and Transmission Siting Board. Most of those are still in front of the siting board or have been approved, and very few have actually moved into construction at this time. We are seeing a growing trend to pair these solar projects with energy storage as the economics of storage becomes more feasible. In general, I'll talk about large scale today. Large scale in general in the industry is classified as being 1 megawatt or larger. These projects fall into 3 types of categories. Merchant, we'll see more about those. Utility-owned projects, those both at our municipal utilities and Kentucky's regulated utilities, and those at the Tennessee Valley Authority. And then the last category we'll briefly go over will be large utility customer-owned, or those what we call behind-the-meter projects that a large customer may put at their facility. Merchant electric generating facilities are defined in KRS 278, and in general, they're classified as projects that are 10 megawatts or more. An important part are these projects must sell the electricity they produce into the wholesale market at rates or charges not regulated by the PSC. And these projects cannot be a qualifying cogeneration facility or a gasification facility at an industrial complex. These projects must go before Kentucky's Electric Generation, Transmission, and Siting Board in order for them to move into construction. So we get a lot of questions about, well, what is the potential for solar? One way that we measure potential for large solar energy or utility projects in the state is to look at the queues. And what do we mean by interconnection queues? Interconnection queues are those seen on this map, and the map we'll be talking about today will go into the circle for PJM, the circle for MISO, the circle to the south of us for TVA, and the circle in the middle of Kentucky, that's Louisville Gas and Electric and Kentucky Utilities. These circles are regional grid operators or balancing authorities, and projects that interconnect to these utilities or grid operators give us an indication of potential projects that could move to construction or development in a state. Once you're in the interconnection queue, there are studies that need to be completed to ensure that the project will not jeopardize the regional grid operator or the utilities reliability, safety, meet their facility standards, and they look to see if it's an overall best fit for their network. So what does the queue or the potential look like for Kentucky? And it is, I should note, queues are very fluid. Projects come in and out of the queues as they move through the processes. This queue is updated about 2 weeks ago. The largest queue that we have is PJM, 150 projects in the queue. 41 of those have storage associated with them or have storage standing alone, and they represent about 18 gigawatts in the queue at PJM. MISO follows at about 3 gigawatts, and again, we see projects that do include storage or storage-only projects. And then LG&E and KU follows closely behind that, and the Tennessee Valley Authority. In total, the queue potential for Kentucky is around 25 gigawatts, spanning 213 projects. I will say, in general, a rule of thumb, only about 20% of the projects in a queue will move through successfully and come out and actually move into construction. And I think we'll hear more about that in our second presentation today.
We actually could. I've got a couple of questions
Sure.
stacking up, if it's okay. Representative, let's see, Dodson.
Yes.
Let's see. Oh, there, sorry. I was looking for you down here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question. For the Energy and Environmental Cabinet, I just want to know what the policy is when we have hazardous waste associated with solar panels. What is done with those components when they're decommissioned?
So that is handled in our Department for Environmental Protection. We currently have hazardous waste regulations. So any waste that is deemed hazardous would fall under our existing regulatory structure for how we manage hazardous waste in the state. So it has to be deemed hazardous, and then they would apply and comply with the requirements that are under the purview of our Department for Environmental Protection.
Quick follow-up. How much waste do we expect solar to produce?
That's a good question. I can get back to you on that. Most of our solar projects have not come out of end of life yet nationwide. So right now, the best we can estimate would be what is going to be built and at what time would it be come to end of life. Just because it's end of life doesn't mean that it would necessarily become a waste. It could also be repowered. But if you would like, we can follow up with you on that for waste from solar facilities.
Thank you. Yes, we would like to have that. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Bland at this time, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Stump, for right here in the front row. Quick question on your fast facts
Yes.
to help me understand. It says Kentucky's utility-owned solar generation accounts for 0.07% of Kentucky's net utility electricity generation. Now, that's referring to solar that's actually generated by the utility companies themselves?
That is correct. So this is Kentucky's utility-owned solar.
Okay. So do you know what percentage currently in Kentucky is being utilized as part of our grid across the state?
That would be this 0.07%. So our grid is under the purview of our utilities and our regional transmission operators. So I would say that 0.07% would be the most accurate number.
Okay. So with 0.07% coming from solar, and I know that we've increased gas output of electricity over the last
That's
decade.
correct. Mm-hmm.
But we've seen a decline. We shut down Big Sandy. TVA shut down. Last week, they've agreed to shut down 2 more coal-fired plants. Do we know, are we becoming, or have we become, and maybe this is a question for the utility companies, have we become more reliant or dependent on other states producing energy to provide our electricity? Because I know at one time we pretty much was able to produce our own here in Kentucky. Have we gone outside that to where we're dependent on other states for that?
So, very good question. Kentucky, due to our transmission system and these balancing authorities, Kentucky interconnects to systems MISO, PJM, and TVA. Because of that, in our transmission system, we both export and import power at varying levels depending on when we have the need. We do have times where we export more, but we also have times when if we have generators that are offline for some unexpected reason, we may need to draw on power from an outside grid like MISO or PJM. So our power generally exports and imports based on the demands of these balancing authorities.
Okay, one more quick question to her.
Please go
answer.
ahead. Absolutely.
So you're saying if a generator's down, we may have to import from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say everything's working at 100%. Is Kentucky generating enough power through all of our sources that we're able to
Meet our needs?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm not going to speak for the Public Service Commission, but the Public Service Commission, with our regulated utilities, looks at something called resource adequacy. So our utilities are required to have enough resources to meet peak demand of their utility customers, and then they're supposed to have a margin of error so that when there are unexpected events that we would be able to meet those needs.
But are those generated in Kentucky?
Some of our utilities actually own power plants not located in the state. So,
Okay.
But resource adequacy is normally looked at, or what are the assets that the utility owns that they can draw upon to meet that peak demand.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Stout. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Thank you. Representative Miles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things that you had up there, just correct me if I'm wrong or explain. Now, as far as the solar farms, they can sell energy without any type of regulation.
No.
Okay.
Merchant electric generating facilities are regulated under 278, and they must go before Kentucky's Electric Generation Transmission and Siting Board before they can move into construction.
Okay. So anything that is the utility company, so to speak, any type of generation they
So
have
the
is regulated.
Yeah, the utility will be overseen by the Public Service Commission. Merchant electric generation facilities will go before the siting board. If you're a large industrial or commercial customer and you do a project at your location, you will then be interconnecting with your utility, and that utility will ensure that your project doesn't compromise their grid when that project interconnects.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see your title is Executive Director, so I'm sure you're a lot more knowledgeable on things than I am on supply and energy. Your policy, since you work on that, how does it look for the next 4 years? Are we, as my constituents in my district, are we guaranteed not to have a blackout, a shortage of energy?
Since over the past 3-4 years, as we work with Kentucky's Emergency Operations Center for energy issues when there's an energy disruption. The biggest event we had was the December event. There were a lot of contributing factors to that, which you've heard from. Given the frequency that we have seen, the natural disasters that have occurred that have resulted in power disruptions, I can't say that we won't have power disruptions in the future, given what our recent history has shown us when we've had to respond to the disruptions that have caused the power outages, whether it be the ice storm, the tornado, or the flooding, or the March wind event.
Let's follow up real quick, Mr. Chairman. So in your knowledge of production of electricity, of power, we've listened to those who are over the grid tell us about maybe some things that might be happening in the future through usage, demand, and shortage. Would you say today that it's the right direction to go to be dismantling these coal power generators? Is that the right policy to take for a future that says we're going to have a higher demand and we're going to have a less production? I mean, I'm trying to understand this meeting that we're fixing to have, and what are we going to do? Is it not our responsibility as policymakers to make sure that doesn't happen?
I think one thing when we look into the future, when we look at the economic development projects that have come online that have increased our demand, as well as what's happening in our housing, residential, and commercial sectors, yes, our demand is expected to increase. Our utilities are preparing to meet that demand. Utmost priority would be maintaining the reliability and the price competitiveness of our electricity, given our status as a manufacturing state. I don't believe we should compromise reliability as we move forward. I don't give preference to any particular type of generating technology. It's more about the quality and characteristics of the grid that we maintain and how we utilize all of those technologies moving forward.
Again,
but I hear your point about maintaining base load resources in order to ensure reliability.
I know you're very knowledgeable on this and your background. Is it making sense that we're forcing a quick reaction to green energy? Then maybe it should be drawn out to a longer period, that we don't make that mistake. Can we not look at what would be your recommendation as a policymaker in your department, as a director, an executive director? What would you suggest to the lawmakers on making sure that doesn't happen? You just told me you don't really take a particular position on solar or coal burners or gas. I listened to and I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but I listened to a message yesterday from our rural electorates telling us that it's coming. Now, do we have deaf ears? I mean, if it's coming, and you're just telling me too that there's going to be a higher demand, can you guarantee that we can meet that demand, that our families are not going to be put in the black in the cold in the winter? The summer you can make it, you can sweat it out. But in the cold of the winter, can I go back to my constituents and guarantee we're not going to have a blackout when I have people telling me that it's coming?
I can guarantee you that we have the generating technology to ensure that the reliability of the grid is maintained. Whether that is fossil or renewable depends on the characteristics you would like to achieve in the grid.
It's going to be tough.
As a policymaker, I think it's important to think about the characteristics you want to maintain rather than the particular type of fuel choice.
It's going to be tough if you tear down your infrastructure.
That is true.
Are you recommending to us that we don't tear it down, that we keep that as a reliable source in the future?
I'm not recommending any retirement decisions. That goes between the utility and the Public Service Commission. What I'm most concerned about is the pace of technology change and what characteristics we would like to maintain and have here in the state. I think we have a whole suite of technology options across all fuels that can help us meet that and meet our customer demands.
Well, what would be your recommendations as most efficient?
Most efficient?
Well, you've seen it in your past experience with energy. Is coal generators, is that efficient? Have they been efficient? Have they been able to produce electricity for us?
Coal generation has been a very reliable baseload power source. We have seen that too with natural gas. We are now seeing it with solar paired with long duration storage. And nuclear is by far one of the most secure, reliable, cleanest source of baseload generation that we have in this nation. We do not currently have that in our fleet here in the state of Kentucky. Our hydro fleet also can provide baseload power as well, and is our leading source of renewables in the state. And at Christmas Eve, it was TVA's hydro and nuclear fleet that really helped us get through that event without any larger impacts than what we saw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for indulging me, and I'll finish with this. If we can see a pie and it's divided up, and we know that our coal generator was a major resource for our electricity, and we're declining and taking that piece of that pie away and trying to submit solar, wind, and some areas that are showing 2% and 3% usage on filling that pie up. We should be smart enough to understand there should be a transitional period on anything. So, I mean, I'd like for your department to at least give us a policy that shows that we're going to be guaranteed that we're going to have electricity that's capable of handling the state of Kentucky. I don't care about surrounding states. I care about what we do with our own districts, and that I can guarantee my people in my district we're not going to go black. We're not going to have cold nights. And I'm watching things. Am I wrong? Am I reading things that are lying to me, saying we're going to have a shortage in the future?
No, I think when you say our department have a policy, we do not regulate our utilities in the state. My office
No, but you can
does.
make suggestions to us that we can make suggestions.
We can.
Okay.
I think the biggest source of information for how we are going to transition over the next 4 years, 10 years, will be in our utility integrated resource planning. They evaluate generation technologies and make recommendations on what their own resource portfolio will look like in the next 15 years in order to meet reliability and price competitiveness. That's the leading source of information for, to your point, how Kentucky will be transitioning over the next 4 to 10 years will be in our utilities integrated resource plans.
Well, could I say your recommendation then would be to hold up on tearing down these coal burners until we figure this thing out?
I think we should carefully evaluate any retirement impacts as it might impact the reliability of our grid.
That's what I wanted to hear, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. And we have Representative Fugit. And then at that time, we're going to talk, because we have another presentation here as well. I want to make sure we get them on. Representative Fugit, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A quick question. Is a less reliable energy source more expensive to upkeep than a energy source that is more reliable? What I'm asking is it more expensive to upkeep the solar form of energy than it would be to upkeep a coal-fired regeneration plant?
In general, when we look at operational costs and maintenance costs on solar are extremely low.
Okay, which leads me to the next question, Mr. Chairman. If that is true, then East Kentucky, with the coal-fired plants being taken away and all the coal jobs that are gone now and have been replaced with natural gas and or solar, our electric bills, if it's true that it's cost less to upkeep and keep those solar generation plants going, then why in the world are the utilities asking for an 18% rate increase to the people of the mountains?
So just to give you some perspective as well, I'm not aware of any utility-owned solar projects in East Kentucky right now. Kentucky Power doesn't have any solar projects. East Kentucky Power Cooperative only has one utility project in Winchester. The two projects on this map are merchant solar projects that are not feeding Kentucky customers.
Okay, so are you saying that Kentucky Power only has an energy source of natural gas and coal? They don't use any solar?
You would have to confirm that with Kentucky Power. I'm not aware of any Kentucky Power solar resource.
Okay. So even if they don't, using natural gas is not as reliable as coal either. I mean, we say words in Frankfurt like, you know, one of the policies of the Public Service Commission is fair, just, and reasonable. We lose jobs, we lose coal-fired plants, and now we're going to get a 18%, I hope we don't, but they're asking for an 18% rate increase. Why don't the Energy and Environment Cabinet just stand up and say, look, this is not as reliable as coal-fired plants have been in the past. I think you used the word that one of the main things you look at is reliable.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing. Is there anything? Is solar or natural gas as reliable as coal?
They can be, yes,
But they're not. They can be.
Well,
but they're not.
we had some extreme lessons learned Christmas Eve on how natural gas needs to perform in order to meet those reliability standards. With our renewables, you know, hydro is by far the most reliable of the renewables, especially paired with pump storage. With solar, in order for solar to compete with baseload resources and provide that reliability, it has to be paired with long duration storage. And those projects are just now starting to come online.
And I guess I just get frustrated when I hear all this, because where we live in the mountains, we used to supply all the power across the state and other states. We had the lowest electric rates of any part of the state or country where we live in the mountains. Now, since we've shut down the most reliable, in my opinion, and we put in solar and gas, now all of a sudden our power rates have increased already. I don't know what the percent is, but a lot already. Probably 15-20% in the last 8 years or so. And now another 18%, if they get that, that's 38%. 38% increase. Surely to goodness, the Energy and Environment Cabinet could say, now hold on a minute, y'all. We're killing the people of Kentucky. Why would we turn down 2 more coal-fired plants or approve that in the state of Kentucky? Why in the world would we do that when we're crippling our people? Not everybody can afford what's going on in this world. And, you know, you got anyway, okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I appreciate it. Just if it's really a reliable, it's not reliable. It's just not.
Well, affordable and reliable are both.
Affordable and reliable.
I want to be sensitive to the committee's time. I've got some other slides. I'll be happy to answer questions after the meeting.
I want to point out for you is that this is important for us, and you can sense the frustration up here. There's a couple factors here. One, there's a rate increase we just recently were made aware of, and an article that came out that I think several of us got either today or whatever about a very bleak picture of what the winter is going to look like in Kentucky. And I think that's what you're seeing up here. And just to make sure everybody understands, Mrs. Stump is not a regulatory agent. She's an advisor to help us, and we're helping you get some feedback from some of the frustration that we have. But that's what
I too share your concern, having sat at the Emergency Operations Center during every one of the
I know there's a lot you'd like to say. Yeah. Let's just say that you're probably not at much liberty to say as much as maybe we might want you to, but that's what's happening.
I'll
very
also
frustrated.
Thank you. Again, I want to be cognizant of everyone's time in our next presentation. Just to be clear, the merchant projects that were on that map do not really sell directly to electric utility customers. They either contract with a commercial off-taker via a virtual power purchase agreement in those wholesale markets. They contract with one of Kentucky's retail electricity suppliers to provide that power to a commercial customer via a green tariff. Or these projects contract with an entity like Kentucky Municipal Energy Agency to deliver that solar energy to the municipal utilities. Here are the actual utility solar storage projects in the state of Kentucky that are owned by Kentucky's utilities. There are 2 that are planned. One at Shawnee, Project Phoenix will be on an ash landfill there. And then Kentucky Utilities has one proposed in Mercer County. The total operational capacity is only 30 megawatts currently with our utilities. just to remind everyone, we have 18 gigawatts of operating capacity across all fuels. Solar only accounts for 30 megawatts in our utilities fleet. The last is I just would like to remind the committee, we do have large commercial customers who are installing large projects at their facility. The very first one of those was actually Fort Knox. L'Oreal, Lexmark are all examples. And one of the most aggressive customers has been the Kentucky National Guard, which has been installing a significant amount of solar at their facilities statewide. And Chairman, I'm almost at the end. Here are some factors that both positively and negatively affect solar or battery deployment in the state. Cost competitiveness is one. Supply chain, domestic sourcing requirements are another one. Of course, federal incentives. The structure in our wholesale markets really drive these merchant solar projects, and we are seeing more movement in the wholesale market structure, to your point, to incentivize more firm baseload and fuel secure resources, as well as black start resources, or those resources that can start up without the need for power from the grid. That will impact the development of solar in the future as we incentivize more firm and black start resources. On the distributed side, if we can aggregate distributed energy and have that market access, that will affect our distributed rooftop solar. Of course, corporate goals drive our virtual power purchase agreements. Neighboring state policies will also affect how solar develops in Kentucky. EPA and environmental regulations, such as the comment we received on how we handle solar panel waste in the future, will be one that will also impact on development. And most importantly, the interconnection queue processing times, as well as tariffs. There's been a lot of conversations about the queue process and how that needs to be more fluid to allow projects to come out of the queue and into construction. We have a few tools and resources we would like to share. One notable one is our solar site suitability and reclaimed mine lands tool. This map shows the most suitable areas of the state for large-scale solar energy development. We overlay this map with Kentucky's reclaimed mine lands in hopes that we can drive project development onto more brownfield sites and into our reclaimed mine lands. And we have seen 2 of those projects in East Kentucky.
Can I ask you a question? How,
yes.
like this map you're showing
yes.
here gives us a good idea. When would this be deployable? Is this active now?
Yeah,
Like
this is currently on
currently pull
Kentucky
from?
Office of Energy Policy's website. The areas that are really highlighted bright green, those are more of the most highly suitable locations for large-scale solar development. This map is interactive. You can look at transmission lines, substations, what utility area it is, and then you can drill down and find mine boundaries and mine locations where you might find a match for solar in the state.
And to echo what Representative Fugit was saying, if you look in the eastern part where the bills just keep going up, there's not much green over
That's
in there.
correct.
So it's a great concern to us. But I know that's not your doing. It's just a point from us up here. But
one of the
please go
major
ahead.
limitations for solar site suitability is slope and topography, which makes it very challenging in East Kentucky. That said, as you drill down into the map, we do find a few spots where we're seeing some opportunities, and 2 of those have already emerged in front of the siting board as 2 projects in East Kentucky for merchants. And I think, even though I'm asking for questions, I think we've already had questions.
Chairman Gooch has got a quick comment or question.
Yes, Chairman.
I will be very, very brief. And the map you just showed is very, very interesting. I think part of the problem, though, that I see is that most of the places in West Kentucky is really, that's where the prime farmland
correct.
prime farmland is. And it seems that many of the people that are wanting to develop merchant, they're actually, that's where they're looking, is that flat farmland. And I know that a lot of farmers are interested in that because they're being promised maybe greater yields for doing that. than they are from crops. But we in a world where people are starving to death, and the fact that almost 40% of our corn crops go into ethanol, I just still have to question how much food is it okay to turn into fuel? And I just wanted to make that comment, Mr. Chairman.
You're correct. Thank you, Chairman. One of the issues that we do have with solar is it is land intensive compared to other generating technologies. So the energy density in solar is not what we might see from other technologies. And that's something that we have to balance as we see development. I will say this map does have a layer for prime farmland so that we can see where we would want to protect prime farmland that might overlap with solar development. I'd like to point out the counties in yellow have passed solar ordinances. We also track county solar ordinances. So these are ordinances where the counties have taken upon themselves to where they are taking control and limiting how they would like to see large-scale solar development in the state. We encourage counties to submit their ordinance to us so that we can track those and see how those are developing statewide.
Okay, if you want to, we'll go ahead to the next presentation.
Great, thank you. And I will endeavor to be efficient with this. And Director Stump, you covered some of the things I was going to talk about, so I will skip through some of those. And
to drive.
Could I ask you to just flip the slides a little bit? Thank you so much. If you just go to the second slide, please. So just very briefly as an introduction to me, so I'm executive director of a group called Merrick Action, or the Mid-Atlantic Renewable Energy Coalition. We are an organization that represents utility scale developers of solar, storage, and wind across the footprint of the states that you can see on the map there. So Kentucky is one of our biggest markets for solar right now, so really honored to be here. Chairman Smith, Chairman Gooch, thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to try to zoom in on a couple of points that I think were brought up to address some of the questions here and hopefully foster a dialogue that's interesting at the end of the day. If you don't mind going to this slide. Yes, thank you. So just a couple of milestones that I want to highlight. Although solar has not been a large industry in the state up till this point, the first grid scale merchant generation plant is actually online now in Garrard County. So there's some progress being made in terms of bringing solar online. We also have over 800 megawatts of solar actually actively under construction being built today. So that's a nice milestone as well. Once the 4,200 megawatts that Director Stump mentioned gets built, that'll power about 550,000 Kentucky homes or the equivalent, if those projects are serving other interests. There's also a lot of jobs in the state. 2,300 Kentuckians currently work in solar or in energy storage, and that number is going to go up as more of these projects enter construction.
As that power comes on the market, I'm assuming they're doing like a pooled margin between the other sources you have in there. Does this added solar pull the margin down so it's cheaper for the ratepayer, or is that right now at the cost is going to increase that pool for the next foreseeable future until it's more mass produced and comes down? What would the ratepayers expect as this power becomes on the market?
Sure. That's a good segue to a few things I was going to talk about. So the reason why these large manufacturers are buying solar, companies like Amazon or Toyota here in the state, is because it offers, yes, low prices, also stable prices. You can lock in with a solar facility an energy price over 20 years, like a long-term mortgage, because there's no fuel costs. So you what you see is what you get. You pay up front, and that allows you to have that long-term price certainty. To answer the question about consumers, to the extent that the projects are being purchased by the utilities in the state, which we do not represent, we're the companies that sell to the utilities, they will then merge that into their overall price of electricity, which affects retail rates. So the way I like to think about it is when you look at a grid as a whole, or a state as a whole, if you're adding solar as part of an all of the above mix, which we are fully in support of, by the way, you have peak periods of demand like late afternoons or winter periods when you need heat or you need cooling. And if you add some solar to the grid, you're able to shave off the peak demand where otherwise a gas plant would be running at full bore and natural gas can be expensive when there's a lot of demand. So in that way, solar can help to moderate prices for consumers. One challenge, and I'll be fully transparent, I think to the point that a couple of the representatives on the first row here made, one of the challenges we're facing as a nation and as a state is coal plants are online today, and Director Stump is correct that it's often more expensive from a maintenance perspective and from a fuel standpoint to run coal than it is to run solar. But we are talking about building solar facilities, and so you have to invest upfront capital, which does have a cost associated with it. In defense of the solar industry, there's also a cost associated with upgrading and keeping up coal plants. So it's not a simple kind of black and white, I would say, cost equation that's easy to figure out. But I think that from my perspective, at least, adding some solar to the grid can be beneficial to Kentucky because it's helping Kentucky produce more energy in the state. It's also diversifying the mix, so you're not as vulnerable to any one kind of resource going
I think
offline,
most of us
et
believe
cetera.
that have a diversified mix, but also in all fairness and candor, as you said, that when you look at that coal and you've literally got the federal finger has been pushing down to increase some of the costs for that, and a lot of these plants are idled down. They're kept in the mix because truthfully we're making the utilities keep it there for these emergencies, but they're not doing any more than they have to because they're afraid the federal will shift in a different direction and make it tougher. So when you're barely maintaining or keeping a plant online because the General Assembly's making you and then you need it, you come running to us and say, oh, the costs are so great because it's been neglected. So I think it's important for us to look at, before we outsource and start spending power or buying power from another state or whatever, we should look at our own house first and make sure it's clean and taken care of and well managed and well maintained. So that said, I'm just really curious if you took a megawatt of energy and you looked at what the cost for solar was and natural gas and hydro or coal. I'd like to see a comparison of what the true cost of that is without the federal. I mean, look at the Henry Hub. That gives you a pretty good idea. Coal's still extremely competitive in a lot of places that you don't have the federal government involved with it. But I think when you do that pooled margin, that's what we're looking at. What is the winter really going to look like for us? Because that article, I think many of us saw, is very concerning of blackouts and runaway utility prices on people already with the highest inflation they've ever had. So it's a very bleak story.
That's very well point taken, Senator. And I think just as maybe a comment on system reliability, and Director, if you don't mind going to the last slide, I want to skip ahead to that. That's it, yeah. I did have a slide in here because I figured that this would be a topic that you would be interested in, system reliability. So I just want to draw attention to a couple of items here. So this chart is from the end of 2022, so it's relatively recent. It shows the different RTOs, regional transmission operators across the country. So PJM, I starred there, but as was noted, parts of Kentucky are in TVA and MISO territory. And just one thing I want to draw attention to is when you talk about the all of the above electricity mix, PJM right now has the least renewable energy as a portion of the grid. So if you look at the small darker blue section, so I think that as we add some renewables to the grid, our industry, we want to compete like any other business, have a chance to add to the grid. We're seeing electricity demand rise. To the Senator's point, PJM is raising serious concerns about resource adequacy in the 2030 time horizon. And what I hope one thing maybe you'll take away from the presentation is that I think solar, it's not the only solution to reliability. We do need thermal resources, especially now, because that's what we rely on for our grid today. But adding some solar to the mix can help reliability in the sense that, again, you're diversifying, not having a vulnerability of one energy source versus another. And you're able to, I think, pull from other states is an important thing that shouldn't be diminished too much here. I mean, if you look at Texas, when they had the blackouts where people died, Texas made themselves an island when it comes to the electricity grid. And that is partially why they were not successful. And so I think the fact that Kentucky sits right at the middle of three different grids, you're actually very well positioned not just to import power if you need it, but to export power and sell, including, Kentucky's venerable coal resources and gas resources, and hopefully solar, to other states. So maybe I'll end there. I'm happy to take any questions, but
I just think it is important for us. I mean, we had a presentation before talking about digital assets and blockchain. All these are technologies that are driven on power. The future for our state and many other places in the United States and the world is going to be digital, and those who have the most power. Places that are energy poor they're going to fall behind. They're going to have health issues. We know what happens. There's plenty of cases we can quote of what happens when your country is, energy poor. So I think we want to make sure that Kentucky, with our rich assets that we have, and do not wind up with the picture that's been laid out about what could happen to us this winter. Representative Smith's been on point with that this afternoon, and Representative Blanton and Fugate. This is my first row here. I'm going to have to start. I got some linebackers here, but but it is important. You can tell where the passion of this committee is. But we have Senator Mills has a question.
Over here. Just a couple questions, since your expertise in solar will help me understand this. Could you explain the difference between the power that is produced from solar versus the power that's produced from fossil fuels? Is there a difference, and could you explain to the committee about that?
Maybe I'll start, and it sounds like Director Stump wants to jump into. It's a good question. So an electron is an electron fundamentally once it gets onto the grid. I think that something Director Stump said, and maybe this is a good pivot to her, is that you're really looking at the attributes of the system as a whole is what you want to maintain from a reliability standpoint. So you do want some resources that are dispatchable, that like a natural gas or a coal plant that you can turn on and off and generally know that that's going to be there. You also want some zero fuel cost resources like solar that mean you're not overtaxing your coal supplies. Like we've seen natural gas pipelines freeze up or run out of resources during peak periods. If you had some solar on the grid, that can help to reduce that risk of gas pipelines being overstretched.
In general, yes, the electrons are not green or black, they're just electrons. However, the biggest difference between solar and what we see with our fossil assets and some other assets even that are on the renewable side is our solar power, when it's produced, is inverter based, and our thermal fossil resources are spinning inertia. And so they help kind of think of it as kind of balance that grid, that inertia. The solar can be mitigated with things like power electronics to help with that inertia that they don't inherently have because they're not a spinning resource. That's the major difference. But in the end, the electrons are the same. It's just when they come on the grid, when they come off the grid, and when you want to kind of control and dispatch those are the biggest differences.
Okay, good. And then just one other question, Chairman. What would you? I guess either one of y'all could answer this. What would the solar market look like to you if there was not any federal incentives in the last 5 years and then moving forward as well?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because it is an important one. The solar industry does receive the federal investment tax credit, and it has for many years. It was recently extended in the Inflation Reduction Act, which was the Joe Manchin, Joe Biden legislation. What I would say to specifically answer the question is the incentives are important. All energy sources have received incentives at some point in their lifespan as an energy source. Solar is increasingly cost competitive, and I may follow up with the committee with a resource on that sort of answers Senator Smith's question about what if there were no subsidies. What I would say the subsidies today are most important for, like the Inflation Reduction Act, is for one big reason, really. It's to bring manufacturing to the United States. So right now our supply chain is heavily reliant on a lot of foreign countries, and without tax credits or with on-again, off-again tax credits like we've seen in the past, you might be able to get some solar projects or some wind projects built, but you really aren't able to sustain the factories which can make those products here in the United States. And so, it is a policy choice that not everybody agrees with, and I respect that, but we feel it's very important to creating a stable pipeline that can create those American manufacturing jobs.
Very good. I'm done. I could keep on going, but I'm done.
All right. Well, we have no other further questions here. Do you all have any parting comments as you wrap up and close?
I might just say, again, thank you for the opportunity. Hopefully I was able to condense my presentation effectively. And, the solar industry, we want to be here as part of the solution. We want to help the challenges that your constituents are facing. I empathize with the electricity cost concerns and with the reliability concerns. I mean, just being fully frank, like if the lights go off, often the renewables industry gets a lot of the heat for that. And so I want as much as possible to help be a solution, source of ideas and hopefully help this body, if you have questions and comments going forward. So thank you.
I would just like to say thank you again for having us here. The Office of Energy Policy is here as a resource. Barry Mayfield is here with me. If any of the committee members would like to follow up or have further conversations about the topics today, we'd be happy to engage with you and talk through some of these important issues.
Do you send out a report? Is there a quarterly or anything that comes out to the General Assembly of your all's?
We do not. We are not mandated to provide a report to the Assembly.
Okay. Yeah, I just wonder if you all printed one. Not that I don't want to mandate it, but I think it'd be fascinating for us. I would personally like to have a better understanding of some of the stuff you're working on.
We will be working on an annual report. We'll make sure we get that to the committee.
Yeah, we'd like to have one of those. All right, with nothing